Hello, folks. Welcome to another House Coat Chat. This is the Dude Justice Truth. Yes, I'm going to put on my shade today because that is what I need to do. And I'm not sure why I don't have sound. Am I got sound? Let's just make sure because I'm not hearing anything out of my ears. Uh-oh. Well, we're going to pause the stream. I don't know if I got sound. We will check here because I should be live. And then we'll go to YouTube on my iPad to see if this is streaming. Yeah, let's check that. Oh, there we go. I think we have some sound now. Sorry about that, folks. I know exactly what was wrong there. And that was my iPad is on Bluetooth. And I was on the X because I want to be able to basically, how do I put it? Talk and do things at the same time. Anyways, yes, this is Justice Truth, the dude in the house coat chat number 60. And I'm kind of excited. 60 of them. And I know I don't make them on a regular basis or anything like that. But guess what, folks? I am still trying and I still want to do this. Let me put my glasses away safely. And yes, again, this is the dude in the house coat, Justice Truth. I want to make an update. I forgot to mention about my scone, which is the little guy over here that's lit with the tea light. That scone is for everybody that is missing a loved one, including myself and all that, and honoring those that have passed on. That is for you. That is for me. Just so you're aware, I didn't mention it at all last episode number 59 and stuff, but I am mentioning it now to get it out of the way. Another thing I want to get out of the way is the missing child update stuff that I was hoping to do here on YouTube channel and X. I have apparently tried, I shouldn't say apparently, yesterday I had a fun time trying to load a program onto my computer to help me show off stuff while live instead of just talking to you like this, which is originally how I really wanted to do this show because of the rise of AI, artificial intelligence, and so many other people doing shows out there that I thought I'd try and be a little different, just be a dude talking to you because I'm not trying to persuade you of anything other than to read more. But to get back to the missing child update thing, I'm not going to be displaying a picture up, obviously, because I had a fun time with the program yesterday. It apparently gave me some viruses and a few other things. And thanks to Grok on artificial intelligence on my iPad, I was able to fix my computer so I could do a show today. Well, the technology sometimes is such a pain in the butt. I'm trying, and guess what? Well, we're doing a show today. There'll be no pictures, there'll be no graphs or anything like that, like other people do. I'm trying to avoid that because what I'm trying to do is say, hey, you should think, maybe you should look into it, maybe you should read more. That is the biggest point of my show, is to try and tell you that you need to read more because our government and our mainstream media are not really telling you the honest goodness truth. All right, it is amazing. It's just the fact that we have these censorship laws again coming into Canada after what? Since 2020, people, there has probably been a dozen's attempt by the federal government to limit our speech online and everything else. I know I said on a previous episode that I'm going to talk about some bills that are being announced in the House of Commons. That was part of the reasons why I wanted to get the program up and running so I can kind of show you some stuff, but that takes away from the show that I'm trying to tell you. Bill C9 is up and it is not a very good law. If you've been paying attention, you realize that they are trying to punish people regarding their religious scriptures. And at the moment, it appears that they have the Bible and the Christian stuff in their crosshairs. Unbeholden to anyone is why are we doing this? It is fine to have your religious scriptures, and as long as you practice your faith and you're not bothering the other people, I don't see how you can limit their speech in that regard. Now, if the people are harassing people, that might be a slightly different topic and subject in a way because that becomes almost criminality. If you are pestering somebody or a group and they ask you to stop or please refrain from it, and you should perhaps refrain from doing that. All I'm going to say is that some of the stuff, besides the religious aspect of maybe putting pastors, imams, rabbis in prison for so-called hate speech because of text in their religious beliefs, may be offensive to somebody else, or a group of people like the alphabet community. I will not really go into it too much detail and stuff like that. But the censorship laws, folks, I mean, I'm amazed at how many times our government has been trying to censor what we as individuals should be allowed to say. This is not new stuff in a way, because ever since the rise of the print, and I mean print by the way back in the day when they manually pressed each page to hand out to people, so we're going back to like the 1500s, late 1400s, maybe even a little sooner than that. I'm just trying to go off the top of my head. But way back in history, when the printing press was first made, the amount of things that they did back then to suppress people from knowing maybe the so-called truth is amazing. It is still being repeated after centuries of time. The only thing that has changed is the technology. And like I said, the old printing press where they made one page at a time by hand, basically, to now where we have this digital medium, such as myself, speaking to you live right now. I could be killed instantly off the internet if somebody from the government, like the CRTC, for example, whether or not the CRTC is going to be controlling this aspect of the censorship is kind of not really irrelevant or the point. It's just using it as an example. If somebody from the CRTC was watching my live feed and I was criticizing Carney, saying this, that, and that, without really being overly offensive or even not even off the mark, just stating some facts that have been presented by the government and using it against them, they can shut my channel down and kill my internet without any problem doing so. Whereas before, they would basically have to get a court order and a judge would have to look it over. We don't want our government to have that kind of power, because if they want us to be in a digital world with digital currency, digital ID, everybody needs to have access to the internet then. If you're going to arbitrarily cut somebody off from their banking of online banking or communication with their friends, families, and even their enemies, so to speak, as trolling, whatever people do online, when you make a comment, somebody makes a nasty comment. Right? I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, but they're not being honest about it, folks. Trying to use children. How many different governments have you seen over the years that use children at the face? We must do it for the children, only to find out later that it wasn't about the children at all. It was about controlling you and you and you and you, but not me. Not me as in personally me, but me, the government. We do not want unelected bureaucrats or even elected bureaucrats to be able to take our power of speech away. It is okay to criticize the government. It is okay to ask questions, and we should be allowed. And I will use what I recently watched and listened today. Michelle Rempel, who's an MP out of Calgary, I think Nose Hill, in that region and stuff. And she is talking to the immigration minister about a letter they received from the Deputy Minister of Immigration stating that they don't want people on the committee to be sharing online or in public any information that is going on in this committee regarding immigration reform or just in immigration in general. I encourage people to go look up some CPAC footages yourself and actually spend some time watching them. It could be boring, but you may be surprised at the gibberish that a lot of this stuff is. But the point is that the government was trying to censor people within the government who are trying to say, hey, what's going on? What you are doing, we don't like it. We want to question you. And we should be able to say, hey, we think there's a problem here to the public, and we should be able to broadcast to the public that we think what the immigration and the Liberal Party is doing with immigration It's wrong and it needs to be put into check. And we are broadcasting it out there to the Canadian public so they are aware that there's some kind of opposition and questioning of what's going on in our government. It is really that simple. We should be able to question the government and ask questions. We should be able to have a response that is public, not private, right? And these things are paramount in a functioning democracy. Basically, I like democracy, but the only thing I don't like about democracy is that it's 50% plus one. That is the only thing, which means that the majority rules. That is why we kind of have a Senate, and there's a few other things in between. There's a sober second thought in the Senate when a law is passed, and they, send it back to the Parliament, and then it gets redone, right? But we do not want somebody that's unelected being able to read arbitrarily that what you said is wrong and be able to cut you off from speaking, from online access. I mean, how many people now have their bills paid online, get their receipts online for their bill payments, get government documents online, and now they want to take your ability away to be online? I mean, it's just making it more and more for me to go buy something like the Starlink satellite service, because hopefully they won't be able to shut me off if I have Starlink. But I digress. Censorship is wrong, in my opinion. I think the people need to know stuff. I will go to say this, that if it's harassment, but it has to be kind of proven that it's harassment, that you can shut somebody's internet off. Like, for example, I read a story where a woman who there was a relationship and the people broke up, but the woman basically texted, emailed, phoned the guy thousands upon times a day. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it's a wild story, and it's a wow, like boom, holy smokes, there's some crazy people. But that kind of harassment, yes, I can understand that maybe that person should have the technology taken away. But, again, censorship is wrong. The fact that, like, I see a headline from CTV News saying that Trump is cracking down on immigrants again, which is misleading. He is attacking a segment of the population that is ripping off the United States government by fraud into the billions. It's close to $1 billion that I know of today. And I'm not going to name the group of people because it's still fraud, it's still illegal, and it's been exposed. There doesn't need to be whatever label attached to them. If you are ripping off a country that has accepted you into their country, and you weren't born there, but you came there, whether as a refugee, as an asylum seeker, or even a legal immigrant, if you burn the host country and stuff, you should leave. And voluntarily at first, and if not, just get out or get forced to be removed, or you go to jail for your crimes and then sent home. And that should be the same as in Canada. We should be respecting our borders. And yet, I know this is about censorship that I'm talking about and all that, and it still kind of ties into everything. What the point is that the CTV headline was misleading. It is lying to us as a Canadian public of what is truly going on in the United States of America. We need honesty, not a narrative, not an ideology-driven thing, but honesty, so that we could judge for ourselves as the public people. Oh, well, that's a travesty. Oh, well, that's a good thing, right? Our own honest opinion by having just the 5 W's given to us in a newscast. What are the 5 W's, remember? Who, what, where, why, and when, right? The 5 W's. That's what we should know in a news article. We shouldn't be bombarded with the headline that's misleading right off to the top. Then they give you their ideological thing that they're saying, their narrative that they want you to believe. And then at the very bottom, when you get to the article, and most people don't even finish reading an article, folks, they tell you the actual truth. That is wrong. Your opening paragraph should be the basis of your story. and then you break it down in further paragraphs and then have a conclusion at the end. Journalism today, as what I remember being journalism, and I even took a journalism course, and I've attempted to be a writer a long time ago. And I was, I was corrected many of my assignments because I didn't follow the 5 Ws, or I had assumptions and everything else like that. And it's so, according to my teacher that was helping me when I took an online course for journalism long time ago. Anyways, let's just get off the censorship wagon, other than the fact that, folks, please go look up these bills like Bill C9. Realize that they're going after religious freedoms and freedom of expression. If you guys look up these bills, you might not like it, and I encourage you to contact your member of Parliament, like I have with Todd Doherty, who is my MP in my riding for the federal government. You should. And that's what I'm saying, folks. I know I wish I could have had my program up and running and all that. It was frustrating yesterday, but I kind of don't really want to go there because, there's a lot of people already doing that out there. And I'm just trying to tell you to read more. And so read more on the bills coming into this government. So what else could we talk about, folks? I mentioned that the missing children thing. I will try and keep that up, but in the meantime, the basis of why I wanted the program is so that I can actually give you images of the children that are missing within Canada. And if you are watching this show, you might be able to catch that, right? And I really don't want to get into the graphics, the details, and everything else like that by posting it up there. Because with the rise of AI and the rise of a host of other things that are going on in technology, I think just being a simple human in a house coat telling you with a crazy backdrop behind me that the world is crazy. And you should read more, and you should question your government more, and you should move forward with that mindset, because we are slowly, and I mean slowly, dying a death of 1,000 cuts in this country. Now, and I say that because after listening to the budget parliamentary office dude, the guy that they want to replace, who's more in line and shuts up for the Liberal Party, it basically stated that we have less than 2 years before this country is bankrupt unless we change course now. And what did Carney do, folks? He basically is taking your Canada pension, my Canada pension fund, the Quebec pension fund, and he's adding it as an asset for the government accounting principles and practices, which is highly irregular and I dare say probably illegal. But he is a banker and he's trying to do whatever he is that he's trying to do to make this budget work. And I'm glad in a way that this budget passed the way it passed. I don't like how politics works, but I kind of get it. They're now going to make the Liberals own this budget because it passed. And I'll tell you a little tell that I know that the Liberals didn't like what they did. I'll say it again. The Liberals didn't like what they did because what they were hoping was that the Conservatives and the other opposition parties would trigger a Christmas election, and then they would look better because, oh no, we're going to an election again. I wish people would read more, understand things, because remember, when we had the budget passed, the budget should have been the main talking point of mainstream media Canada. We're talking CBC, we're talking CTV, Global, you name it, all these different mainstream organizations. And all they majorly talked about was what, folks? The floor crosser, the guy who left the Conservative Party for the Liberal Party, and there was a few others. And guess what, folks? Well, whatever tricks or things that were being played out, it failed. And another tell I can tell you right now is that Mark Carney smirks before he speaks. Tells you a lot that he did something nefarious. And they apparently were courting this MP from Nova Scotia. I believe Melanie Jolene spoke of this. So yes, the shenanigans of politics is a shitty game. And I hate to swear, but the truth is because politics isn't about the voter voting in an MP to represent them. It is now with political parties, ideologies, special interest groups that have too much control in a party and stuff like that. I mean, this country's going broke, and yet we have two MPs talking about what's going on in Sri Lanka and how we need to give them money. If we are broke and if we can't print any more money, how can we help somebody else out, right? I mean, we're got to the point now, folks, where your old age security that you paid into all your life may be taken away from you when you get to that age because you have too much income as it is. Now, I digress on this issue because, well, maybe partially it's a good thing, and if you make too much money, why should you get the OAS? Well, I think that if you paid into it, you should get it, regardless, even if you made millions and millions of dollars. Now, if you're a senior and you want to say, no, please, maybe put that money towards the debt, I think that could be an option. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But isn't that something? Because I'll tell you what, the American government's close to $40 trillion in debt now. And they actually put it out on a website a few months ago that if you want to contribute to the down payment of the debt, you can do so voluntarily. Oh, wow. I don't know how much people have actually volunteered to pay off the debt of the United States government, but that is something our Canadian government could try with the OHS clawback. Instead of just taking it away from the people, why don't you give them the option of saying, maybe I'll use that to help pay down the debt, right? Because after all, if these people have voted Liberal Party members in for many, many years, they technically own the votes they gave these MPs and party people, the debt that we've accumulated over the years. That's just some food for thought. And that's all I'm going to say. I mean, if I'm going to become rich down the road, I'm definitely not rich right now. I mean, I just spent $1,100 on my pickup truck, and basically I told Danica, Merry Christmas. That's a lot of money, and I'm on a disability income, and I do have a bit of savings, but I don't like going into my savings every time I need a little bit of extra money. I just learned to claw back and wait another day. I have food. My pets have food. I have a roof over my head. So things are pretty good, and I hope things are good for you. And in fact, I hope things are wonderful, and you're just living the life. I really do. If you're a little less than me, I pray that it's better for you. I honestly do. Yes, folks, I know I talked about the censorship, the missing school thing, or the missing kids and stuff like that. Now let's try and talk about something a little bit different that I've watched, and it ties in with Jim McMurdy up there, who I gave you a book review, I believe, last episode. Yes, and this stuff happened in Kamloops, I think on Monday. I guess there was going to be a question and answer period from Frances Whittleson. And she is a very nice lady. She is a teacher, I believe, or a professor at a university that was fired because she dared challenge the narrative of the mass graves that were found at Kamloops, supposedly. You know, those anomalies that they refused to dig up. But if you watch the documentary that was released this week, they are making a killing, I believe it's called. It's about the residential school program, and it's brought on by One BC, the new political party in the province of British Columbia. I happily watched that documentary, and I am shocked and dismayed of how much money has been given to the indigenous tribe to look for these people, and yet they refuse to dig other than to build something or waste money on other frivolous things. Now, to get back to the protest that happened regarding Frances Whittleson, she was denied entry and arrested. She spent an hour in jail because somehow her going onto campus to ask questions and give answers is somehow criminal. It shouldn't be. Universities are what? A place to where debate happens, where higher learning goes on. And this lady was escorted off the property of the University of Victoria. Meanwhile, there was an assault of a volunteer of Frances, and you can clearly see the assault on the video. The police refused to charge the person, who I found out is from Ontario, folks. This agitator came all the way from Ontario to be a shit disturber at this event where there was going to be questions and answers regarding residential school business and stories and all that. A professional academic who studies residential school history. Shiv McMurdy, whose father was a prominent person, I believe, in the Ontario Supreme Court, who also, Jim McMurdy, I believe, has worked with Mark Carney's father, of all things, with the residential school stuff. And yet here we are having a government that is wanting to make residential school denialism a crime. I will say this about the residential school things that are going on. For all those that have been abused and stuff like that, I'm sorry it happened to you. But did it happen at the scale that the claim of genocidal cultural? No, it did not. The arguments that the other side is saying is truly atrocious and a bad choice of words. Because I have read the letters of residential school parents thanking them for taking their kids and raising them and giving them an education. The Kamloops school had a swimming pool, of all things. They got to go to Mexico. We heard a lot of negativity about the residential schools, even those that have claimed that they told their stories and then, but where's the proof? Right? But you weren't allowed to question a lot of these people who came up with these stories of incinerated babies and stuff like that, or children's digging graves. I mean, they didn't happen. But if you watch that documentary, Making a Killing, you will hear the lawyer stating that I wasn't allowed to interview these people who were abused, nor was I allowed to question them. I had to accept their testimony as is. That is a shame. There should be no criminality charges on people who may have a difference of opinion, especially when it's based on facts. I'm not trying to say that it never happened, but all the teachers and all the volunteers, including the indigenous people that worked at these schools, they're now all scapegoated and scorned because they're attached to this so-called horror of a mass grave. Yet we haven't dug, have we? Now, where they found these anomalies, apparently, are, I guess, old sewer tiles and whatnot, and a few other things. They even claimed they found a rib bone that might have been used and a tooth. Well, the tooth turned out to be an animal tooth, and somehow the rib bone is mysteriously gone. Don't forget that the RCMP also concluded years ago that there was no widespread residential abuse. The sad part also of all this is that the side that's claiming that there was atrocities committed there have used a list of people who were deceased as being involved in the Kamloops school, that they died there. I believe, my memory, if I'm correct, from Jim McMurdy's book, The Scarlet Letter, and from what I've heard, only 2 people have died at the Kamloops school for the many years that it has run. Some people have drowned elsewhere, but their deaths are listed in the so-called residential school thing. It is sad, it is tragic, but I'm asking you at the public, if you're watching my show at the 28-minute mark, I'm going to wrap it up here soon, but go look for truth. Go look up Jim McMurdy's book, and others that are out there, Francis Woodison, even Sean Carlton, I believe. I've had some brief exchanges with him online regarding the residential school stuff. Out of all my interactions, especially with Jim McMurdy, he has been kind. He's answered all my questions, whereas the other person has basically just used slandering, mean words such as denialism, you're racist, you don't know what you're talking about, these survivors do need to be heard. I agree, survivors do need to be heard, but at the end of the day, their story has to be backed up by some proof. If you have been abused, folks, and listen to me very carefully, and if your perpetrator is still out there, residential school or not, please have them charged so you can move on with your life. That is what I can say. Now I know I like to try and have my shows to have a bit of humor and smile. I can watch my face in the while I'm looking at the camera here, and I'm kind of serious and everything else like that. I know I'm wearing the sunglasses, but I want to be able to make it look like I'm looking at the camera all the time. But yes, again, folks, if you have been abused in any way, shape, or form, seek help. Find somebody to help you and end the trauma before it really takes over your life. All that being said, folks, I want you to remember that I was going to hopefully have some missing children information for you, but missing children in Canada Society is on X, they're on YouTube, they even have a web page. Go look it up. I've just spent a few minutes. You may notice somebody, you may know something, you just don't know it until you look. And also, folks, I like to tell people at the end of my show also that please go visit an SPCA at least once in your life. You don't have to adopt a pet, but go look. Maybe make a donation. Maybe you'll go home with a furry friend, but at least you can see what the good people do at an SPCA for the animals that are neglected and left behind. Also, remember the scone, folks. It is lit for you. It is lit for me, for a lost one that you've had or whatever, right? Or the tragedies that are going on around the world. That is what that scone is for. And it's why I always light one before I start the show and say kind of a small prayer, you know. And also, yeah, I noticed I didn't turn on a